Hi, this is Joe Lindsley, American in Kyiv with our Land of the Free podcast, produced with Ukrainska Pravda and our team from UkrainianFreedomNews.com. And here I have my great friend Michael Poperechnyuk from the city of Nikopol. We call you Mayor Mike because you're very good at connecting people. You're not a mayor. You did run for mayor in the city of Nikopol before Russia's full-scale invasion. You're an entrepreneur. You were the kickboxing champion of Europe in your career as a sportsman. And now, in the time of the full-scale invasion, your city gets hit day and night by the Russians. It's one of the hardest hit places. You are working on diplomatic efforts to, travel through Europe and other places to build up support for Ukraine, but also working to get supplies, not just to Nikopol, but to soldiers at the front lines. And, here we are in the studios of Ukrainska Pravda, very posh, comfortable settings, but we run into each other throughout the wartime, and we've taken several wartime road trips. Not always very comfortable because the car is packed with every square inch of your car is packed with material to deliver to people who need it. But Mike, welcome to Land of the Free.
This is the land of the free. Stories of life and liberty in a time of war.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Joe, for this unique opportunity, for your invitation, and mostly for your amazing and very important work. So I always tell everyone, so you're a great ambassador of Ukraine. Thank you so much.
Well, as you say in Ukrainian, Razom, all together for victory. And, our main audience, as we start this podcast, Land of the Free, is Americans who believe in freedom. They talk about freedom. They want to hold on to this idea of freedom. They want to understand it better and to live it well. And especially the Americans who left California for Texas, they're looking for freedom. Here, we see it every day. And, your homeland, your hometown, Nikopol, it's a Greek name. It means city of victory. But that is the ancient heartland of the Cossack people. And you always describe them as simply the freedom people. What does it mean for you to be free?
Freedom,
as Ukrainian.
Freedom is our religion.
It's a religion. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, actually, you're absolutely right. So from my region, Nikopol, which was the capital of 5 Cossack sieges. And
a siege is
siege is some special place where our Cossacks, our warriors, were lived. Mm. And actually, in my city, Nikopol, in 17th century, the famous hetman Bogdan Khmelnytsky was elected like a king of Zaporizhzhia Sich, and it's also pretty interesting, symbol of our region and generally for Ukraine. So that's why Nikopol, matches and mix like Greek ancient and Cossack times. So that's why we, Nikopol citizens, always try to fight also.
We're going to talk about, in this conversation, you have experience, you had, in the days and weeks before the full-scale invasion, Russians were calling you, they were threatening you, and so through this conversation with you, we can show people at a micro level what Russian tactics were in the very early days of their attempt to take over Ukraine and how they were trying to take city by city and trying to bribe officials and scare people. So we'll talk about that. But before that, the city of Nikopol is, amazing history of the Cossacks, and but also it's interesting on many different levels. It's on the Dnipro River. It's a reservoir, and across the reservoir is Enerhodar, which is the largest the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. I remember the first time I went to Nikopol. I don't think you were there, but you set up the trip for us, and we had a delegation of American musicians, like folk musicians from Ohio, American chefs, and volunteers from your group, Solidarity and Evolution, and we had this little picnic on the banks of the reservoir, and it's such a beautiful spot. We could see the Russian occupiers across, several miles across the water, and you could see that nuclear plant, which it has. So much of the world, when they think of what's happening here, that's one of the scariest things for them. And in Nikopol, you live right across from that reality. What has the war been like in Nikopol? And you were just there, I think, 5 days ago. Right?
Yeah, 5 days ago. And, coming back to your trip to Nikopol, you was 1 month before Russians started to shell Nikopol. So you was at the June month.
In 2022.
2022.
Yeah.
So actually it was pretty, calm time.
It was strange, man, because
Yeah.
we could see,
Yeah.
and we could see fires
Yeah,
across the water.
you could see them
Yeah.
because it's from 4 until 6 kilometers across the river. It was Russian troops, and it was really dangerous. But I think it was your coming. It was amazing event and special occasion for all people who do volunteering, for soldiers, for local leaders, because you came with your team, with the musicians, with the volunteers, and you showed, great example how you can support us. It was very important for people who are on the line. You also can feel it in Kharkiv, in Donbas region cities where you visit regularly. And that's why if people see Americans like you who come, support and help, it's amazing vibe and an amazing feeling for locals. But coming back to your question, yeah, probably I was maybe one person in all region who said in public that we have to prepare for a big war. Thanks for my American colleagues, partners, and friends, and from British and European different groups, which told me you have to prepare because it will be full-scale invasion. And I tried, to say, lightly in public, in my social media, that people, we have to be ready. Let's be more confident. Let's be more conscious, because it's real dangerous. Russians assembled more than 150,000 troops in our borders, and that's why, of course, I did the humanitarian and different social activities from 2014. I was a public person.
We should talk about this because you, after the 2014 Revolution of Dignity, you got into politics. So you're a sportsman. Your father is a sportsman as well. Yeah. Your father actually trained Klitschko, the mayor of
a few times.
When he was young.
Because Vitaly Klitschko, he is a former kickboxing world champion.
Before he was in
before his boxing career. So that's why we're like kickboxers. We always remember it.
That's how he started, and he was trained by your father a little at the beginning. And then Klitschko became, world heavyweight champion and then mayor of Kyiv. You came from the sportsman family, which I think was a common thing in Nikopol because, in Soviet times, Nikopol it was a tough city in many ways, right? There was a lot of industry, some gangsters,
absolutely,
and it was a tough city, and then but from the Revolution of Dignity, when Ukrainians reclaimed their country and their government. You were part of this generation saying we need to change things, and so you ran for mayor of Nikopol. I want to put this in the context of fighting corruption, because that's something you've been working on.
Yeah, I started to do my social and political activities in 2014. Because I was, part of Revolution of Dignity. I've been in Maidan, and of course, I was involved in local and regional level in different activities. So that's why I established my NGO, Solidarity and Devolution, and we started to do different good things. And one of them was Vector, fighting against corruption. And we became a regional partner of Transparency International. So that's why not so many organizations can be regional partner. And of course, local clans and local groups like gangsters or local oligarchs, they were mad, they were angry because we started to say in public different things they wanted to hide. And in 2020, I ran for mayor. And because of the biggest oligarch group stopped me, and for example, thousands of people voted for me. Not for political party, not for money, for etc. They voted because we made more than 8 years different good things for our city and for all region. And
You mean your organization?
my
was
organization, my team is absolutely
sort of cleaning up the city, making the parks nicer?
absolutely
Yeah.
anti-corruption, supporting veteranos, supporting elder people, youth policy, different infrastructure projects. Actually, from 2017 until 2020, so 3 years before local elections, I made huge diplomatic work. So I tried to attract different investment to my region. I had negotiation with Arabic countries, European officials, etc. And that's why local corruptioners were angry, because they wanted, to have some frame and all benefits and all best conditions just only for their groups. But it doesn't matter. So despite on the result of the elections, I decided, okay, no problem. I represent thousands of Nikopol people, more than 5,000, and I will go on. So I will continue do everything what I can. And of course, actually, it was also funny because 6 months before elections, local election 2020, I was first Nikopol citizen who was invited by Congress of United States to Washington, D.C. and to Arkansas, Little Rock. I told you, I think you remember it. It was amazing trip. I felt like, first democracy of the world, how it works. And it was pretty funny. When I came back at the February of 2020, actually 2 weeks before pandemic, all pro-Russian activists, all pro-Russian politicians, media blamed me everywhere that I became a State Department or CIA agent.
Really?
Yes,
Now-
it was huge pressure everywhere because Nikopol, it's like, pro-Russian political party OPZZ, which is now is forbidden, they had probably second place in city council of Nikopol. And most of the members of their political party, it's not a secret, they're like agents of Russia. And it was huge, pressure to me, to my closer friends, colleagues, and it was a big challenge.
Were you trained by the CIA?
Actually, it was other funny stories. We can discuss it more and more. So 1 year ago, I was invited to Warsaw Security Forum, which is one of the biggest after Munich security conference in Poland. Yeah, and it were a lot of generals, top politicians, and I met former head of CIA, General Petraeus. And I told him this story that after my coming to United States to Ukraine, all pro-Russian people started to attack me. And I said, due to Russian propaganda, I'm your agent. And he was smiling and told, aren't you? No, I'm an agent of Ukraine. Yeah.
Well, and so,
Yeah.
and this is very, because at the micro level of your city of Nikopol, you had these pro-Russian political parties, pro-Russian media. Right now, in some of the American rhetoric, we hear, Ukraine, and they say Zelensky has banned the pro-Russian parties. And what can you describe what the Russian influence was in your city and what you were fighting? What was this Russian influence in Nikopol?
It was so big because a lot of local politicians and, as I said, different activists, they didn't even hide their minds and their thoughts about Russian policy. And just imagine it was 2020, not so far along from these days. And they tried to have their influence in city council, in media, in plants, even in businesses. And it was really difficult because they made different barriers to me. And it was some kind of mix, like corrupted local oligarch groups with Russian influence. And that's why they put against me 4 technical candidates on elections. And that's why, coming back to the first days of after full-scale invasion, so as I remember, they occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant at the start of the March. So it's after 10 days of the full-scale invasion. And Russians started to call me, by phone because, like a public person, I was a founder of one of the biggest humanitarian center in all region, and I also was a part of territorial defense unit. So just imagine how many roles and responsibilities I had. And of course, Russian understood that they need to stop or neutralize like leaders at the other bank of the river. So I know for sure that they called for a few people in Nikopol, and most of them were in silence. One of them was gone. Actually, most of the politicians and my opponents from elections, they're gone. They run away to Europe.
When did they leave? Before the full-scale invasion?
After.
They snuck out.
Yeah. So they run away so fast.
Yeah.
I stayed there until July. So until July, we provided thousands of refugees and people with the food, with clothes, with medical suppliers. Our battalion, when I was a part, we provided with the uniforms, CUV, cars, drones, etc. So
I saw that operation, but what were these? So you were getting these phone calls.
So, for example, for example,
this is after the full-scale invasion, like the first few days, first weeks,
second week.
Okay. Yeah.
So, firstly, when they occupied Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, they
right
started
across the water.
So, first group who started to call me Chechen people, Chechen guys.
How could you tell their accents?
Accent, yeah. So it was accent. They were so rude. They said, "Oh, we know you. We know all details about you, your relatives. We will cut your head. We will cut your heart. We will kill all your relatives," and blah blah blah. So it was probably a few phone calls.
Just unidentified numbers calling.
Yeah, and I couldn't. Yeah, so I didn't see numbers, and it was pity because I couldn't record this message. This conversation, and I think we need to find a good application to record this. And when they understood that it's impossible to pressure me, started.
What were they asking you to do? What do they want?
No, it was just attacking, informational attack, moral attack to to stop me, or maybe they thought that I will be scared or afraid, or I will run away. No, they understood it. Nah, man, I'm from sport. So for me, it's like, when somebody started to attack and to be aggressive, I will pay back in the same. So they understood it. And after Chechen people started to call me FSB guys. So FSB guys, they
Russian
were,
security services.
Yeah. So they were more clever. They, started to negotiate with me and say, "Oh, look, you're a young politician, you're a public leader, so every your effort, it doesn't matter, we will win," etc. For me, it was also interesting because I also tried to explain them, because I heard they were young guys.
Did they identify themselves as FSB or?
No. They were like, we special people. Special people. So what kind of reaction a person can do? To say them, go away, or we can say more rude. Or I try to say them, guys, I also hear, I made my own psychological conversation negotiation. I say to them, guys, you're also young. You are invaders. You came with your troops to my country. As you see, all people of Ukraine don't support you. So, for example, and just imagine, you will be killed everywhere, from each window, from each door. So I want to explain you. So if you don't stop, you will be killed. So you have a time to go back, step back. They were shocked. For example, just imagine, they called it to me, to stop me. And I made it in another way and said, actually, it was also 2 phone calls from them. And they understood that it's a bad idea.
Not possible.
Not possible. And actually, after it, I just increased my efforts. And I'm so happy that because of social media, everyone can see. I'm proud of it. A lot of people, especially in Nikopol, stayed in their home. They helped thousands of people. And it was amazing time. Real unity of people. unity of freedom people who want to fight for their liberty and their freedom.
Because at that point, I mean, the Russians very quickly took across the water. They very quickly took cities and places in Kherson region. And when we look at what they were trying to do in Nikopol, probably it was similar tactics. They were able to threaten people and bribe people, and so those places fell. And you were protected by that barrier of the river.
Yeah, but it was also dangerous. We were waiting actually before their shell in Nikopol in July. We were waiting for descent because it's not so. It wasn't so hard or difficult operation because, for example, each soldier can say when they start to shell by Grad artillery. Actually, I saw so many times when they put the Grad artillery between reactors of Zaporizhia nuclear power
you
plant.
see it from your side.
Yeah, I saw it by my own eyes so many times because they used Zaporizhia nuclear power plant like a shell.
Because Ukrainians can't attack.
You can't attack,
the
but
positions,
such a cynic way what they do after they're shelling Nikopol from Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, they put their artillery maybe 1 or 2 kilometers far from power plant, and they started to shell near nuclear power plant and blame it the Ukraine side. Just imagine for you it.
Just reckless.
Yeah.
When I was in Nikopol before, I've been there several times since, but when I was there, we had this gathering on the riverbank with music and people were dancing, and it was good for the kids and soldiers and volunteers.
You was lucky, really.
We were. I mean, at any moment, something could have happened, and it did just a few weeks later. But that was such a special moment to hold on to. And even I remember, and there's a little harbor at that yacht, or not a yacht club, we call it the yacht club, but it was like a beach club, and that place is destroyed now. It's destroyed.
Yeah, it's really.
There were little kids that were there. There was a protected harbor. There were no mines. It was protected, and there were kids learning to sail, even right across the water from the Russians. And all of that innocence is gone and destroyed now. And so from July 2022, every night really. The Russians have been shelling Nikopol, and then you were just there about 5 days ago, and you told me that it's a new level. And one thing I want to emphasize, like since September 22nd, when Ukraine hit Russia's Black Sea Fleet headquarters, for 47 days now, as of this conversation, there have been no major Russian missile attacks around Ukraine, like we saw last October, for example. But instead, Russians have increased sort of terroristic attacks on frontline cities and towns. And one of those places is Nikopol. And can you describe what it's like? I mean, you were just there 5 days ago. I remember when I was there, when the air raid alarm would go off, the alarms sound different in every region of Ukraine. In Nikopol, it sounds like a nuclear holocaust. It's terrifying. And it rings the entire time of the threat because it's so urgent and dire. I remember once I was there during a thunderstorm, and you hear the sirens and it's madness, and that was when it was calm. Now, as you were walking through your city, delivering humanitarian aid, working with people, getting people what they need, at any moment, Russian artillery can hit anywhere. And I remember I asked you, what is that like? You said, well, I just got to move faster.
It's true.
What can you put everyone? What does it feel like to be in Nikopol? Is the city there's got to be damage everywhere, right?
The tragedy of Nikopol is we can't prepare for shelling or for missiles attack because just 11 seconds when the Russians started to shoot, and it's impossible. So as usual, alarms starts after explosion. So that's why you cannot prepare for this. You can't, achieve shelter in a few seconds. And of course, it's pretty another universe living in the frontline cities. But, I don't know how to explain it, but a lot of people still live there, really a lot of them. And if you go there, you can see many cars, many people, People try to survive, to work, to live there, but it's really hard and difficult to understand that in each moment it can be end. And I have another challenge because I have to provide from 500 until 1,000 person per month with the food. And that's why I'm traveling, I do negotiation with the different partners from business, from politics, from different organizations. And for example, when I come back to my Nikopol and we do this humanitarian mission, we can't collect and we can't assemble more than 150 people in one place. And just imagine, we can manage 150 people probably by 25 minutes. It's our record. 25 minutes we can give and provide food for so
Even
big
though
amount.
they're all scattered around.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
fast
Uh-huh.
because we understand that it's dangerous, but we have to do it in this way. And when we say to people, please go home, we have to wait for alarm, people don't want to go. They say, or we came here, please give us our food or our water.
Do people still sleep in their cars outside of the city to get away from the
No,
show?
not now.
Why? Because they get used to it?
I think most of people decided to go to closest villages or cities, but other people decided to live in their apartments. Most of them became like a fatalist. So they say, if it's our fate, okay.
I want to look at more philosophically for a second. What is this? I mean, you're of the generation of Maidan, when young Ukrainians, but really Ukrainians of all ages said, we don't want to live in the Soviet hell. We really want to make a clear break from the Russian grip. I want to ask, what is freedom? What does freedom mean to you? But it seems that goes with the question of corruption. And this is, Russian propaganda uses this very well, but when people in the West don't want to support Ukraine, they just say that one word, corruption. What is the reality of corruption, and not just in Nikopol, but also in Kyiv? I mean, you build political alliances. You work with a whole generation of young politicians you are working with. How would you define what is the corruption challenge that Ukraine faces, and what kind of progress is being made on that?
It's a very good question, thank you, because we started to fight against corruption a long time ago. And now we see that corruption...
What is corruption?
Corruption, like a process, is the best ally for Putin's regime. Corruption in Ukraine, I mean. Putin's regime and all his servants understand that if Ukraine will be deep inside of corruption, it will not be, some European or democratic success for our country. So that's why they try to produce it in their way and use these narratives all around Europe and all around the world. But for me, I also understand that a lot of our authorities, bureaucrats, really think that during the war they can earn millions, and they went out to be like a part of Battalion Monaco.
the Monte Carlo battalion.
Yeah.
The people that aren't doing anything to help.
And it's so pity.
Yeah.
And I understand how we can, reduce amount of corruption through political education, through conscious citizens. We have to explain different people from young generation until elder people that if somebody increase budget wastes for, I don't know, some kind of road or parks or etc., they steal your money for development, money for, in our time, in the wartime, money for military things like drones, cars, different gadgets for frontline, etc. So it's absolutely simple thing. If someone steal it in one way, he also steal it in generally from society. And I think if we will have zero level of loyalty to corruption among society, it will be a best step to destroy, to kill it.
And this is what you are working on. obviously, so you're saying there still is lots of corruption.
A lot of corruption. It's really true. But always I try to explain to our Western partners that it's really a problem. We understand it. But now we have to survive like a state, like a nation. Because if Ukraine fell down, who will be next? Poland, Baltic countries, and generally also all the Europe. Because, I have an IT company. And the first months after full-scale invasion, we still volunteer and we send our IT specialists to the cyber army. And we were searching real accounts from Russia, not fake accounts. And we really saw that most of society, most of Russian people, they support Putin's regime, and they say in public, in different social media, it was thousands of messages. They say, when we occupy Ukraine, we will go to Poland and then to Germany and to France. So it's, I think it's, best for understanding what's going on in their mind. And Russia, like a state, like a nation, they understand only language of power. So we can stop them just only beating them. And that's why we need to collect all efforts. Of course, we have to do our home task. In fighting against corruption. So it's possible. It's really possible.
Well, whenever the topic of corruption comes up, I like to remind people. I worked as a journalist in New York State. That's pretty dirty. There's corruption everywhere in the world, and it's even in the United States. There's certain places where it's incredibly nasty, mafia-like, and probably some Russian oligarchs dancing around there too. They always get their hands in the till. But there was this sense of before 2014 that people, not just from Russia but from the Western world, could use Ukraine to plunder because it's such a rich country, with amazing resources. But as I hear these stories of, like you from the 2014 generation in your city said we need to clean up the corruption, and people were doing this in other cities around the country. And Russia was losing its grip on Ukraine. They knew that the grip was kind of lost from 2014. They couldn't control your government, but they tried via other means. So because they couldn't control, they said we need to attack, and that seems to be what's happening. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. That's why I think we have to change our own system inside the country. What I mean in the word of system, if we do fighting against corruption, it will be best signal to our partners abroad. So Europeans like French, German, Italian politicians, they also understand that we have limited time now to fight against Russia, because now we hear a lot of messages abroad that you have to fight, you have to do your home task not only at the front line but also inside the country with your law against corruption, to be more transparent with your procurement, etc. And that's why it's a big challenge for all of us. But I believe we can do it.
Well, so, and then how would you, on the other side of this, how would you define? You describe, you're from the Cossack heartland of Ukraine, the Nikopol, the wild fields. I was talking with some friends recently who would say, the essence of being Ukrainian is being wild, sort of uncontrollable. You, as someone who I know appreciates and loves America very much, that word freedom, we use it so often. What does freedom mean? What does it mean for you?
I think it's difficult to explain it. It's we don't have frames, We don't have if we don't have a censor, we can criticize our government. We can do whatever we want, but under our law. And as less restrictions or frames we have, as more lucky we live. So in this way. But I want also, to add for our previous question. Russians, they also do pretty good work in diplomatic level. I saw it many times. So just imagine they can send different representatives or like spies with a bag of money, and they give it to different leaders in politics, in media, in civil society, all around the Europe and generally all around the world. And they ask just only one thing: be neutral. Don't support Ukraine.
Just shut up. Yeah.
Don't support Russia. Be neutral. Just be in the silence. And it's really dangerous because it's not so difficult to be neutral. Really, you can be in the silence and you will not comment anything. But I always try to to explain. We have to have our own diplomatic Mossad. We also diplomatic Mossad.
Yeah.
I hope we have our real Mossad from our intelligence services. I hope so. But in diplomatic level, we have to have the same, because we have to do counteractions against Russian influence. Because you know very good, Russians have very good, very powerful influence in France, in Germany, in Austria, in Switzerland, and I saw it many times. And that's why it's difficult to explain and negotiate with their top leaders.
Well, I'm sure I told you on one of our road trips, wartime road trips, even a few years ago, I was living in Philadelphia and Russian operatives came after me. The FBI informed me, but I was invited on some free trip to Moscow, like stay at nice hotels and all that. And I wasn't sure if I didn't want to go really, but it was a free trip, so why not? And right before the FBI informed me, this is a secret Russian. They call themselves a cultural organization in Washington, and they were doing exactly this type of stuff. I didn't go, thank God. I'm glad I never that I was aware of what was happening before it. But as you go, like so much, fairly often during the full-scale invasion, during the past 20 months or so, you're often in Europe and here meeting with politicians and building alliances with people who believe in freedom, who see the threat. They see that if Ukraine were to fall, just like the countries that fell in Eastern Europe, and Central Europe, and France in the 1930s, it's going to be a catastrophe for the world. So you meet with people that see this. As you talk with these people, do you hear stories about Russians bringing bags of money to influence people?
Yes, and so many times. In diplomatic level, in political level, and actually in military level. Also, another short story. Russians also go to the producers of weapon and maybe middle companies or middle person. They give bag of money and say, please postpone delivering these weapons to Ukraine from 6 until 12 months. So they buy the time.
How do you know this?
I have connections.
Yeah. Okay.
We
would like to investigate it because this is something. I mean, as you say, if this is happening, these are they know it's hard to track and hard to pin down, but this is the most important thing if we can actually get the details and the facts on it, because it's slippery. And I think, even as in the past several days, there's been very heated rhetoric against Ukraine and America, and attention diverted toward Hamas after Hamas attacked Israel, and the arguments are getting really nasty. And then I get personal attacks too. And sometimes I'm just tired. I'm saying, what am I doing fighting and arguing with these people? And maybe it's time to go to the beach and relax. And that's exactly what they want, And that's what they were trying, as you tell these stories from Nikopol, that's what they were trying. They wanted to wear you out to make you tired. So you just, not that you went onto their side, but just...
But we discussed it a lot with you about how we can build bridges and making coalitions about topic of Ukraine. And I always try to explain, especially abroad, that we don't ask for charity. We ask for global and geo security. We can provide this security for you. Please invest your time, your money to the democratic values, and we will be your bodyguards. If you remember, bodyguards of Europe. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's very important. When I was invited to different organizations in political education in Europe, like a Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, Robert Schuman Institute. Actually, after it, also pro-Russian agents and pro-Russian politicians blamed me that I'm European agent. But it's other funny stories. They see everything and everywhere, agents, because they are a country of agents. They have heritage of Soviet Union KGB style, so that's why everyone in their mind like an agent.
Paranoid.
But it doesn't matter. I was impressed, and it was very interesting for me understand why European countries and different organizations spend money of taxpayers to teaching different political leaders from Ukraine and from east of Europe with values and some democratic and modern things. I always asked them, why did you do it? Because it cost money. And they explained me that for us, for strategy of our countries, it's a general, most of European countries, they explained, more efficient spend money and invest now to you, or if we lose you like a person, like a future decision makers, Russia will cover you and you will be under their influence and their impact. It's very smart. So that's why in this parallel we can say, if you, like United States, Europe and other countries, if you invest now to Ukraine, you will invest to global security, because world love strongest. And now Ukraine shows that we are strong, but we really need the help. And I always be, I will always appreciate all kind of help and support which United States, Great Britain, France, Germany gave to Ukraine. It's very important, but we ask more, to survive, because it's we see that it's long-term war becomes now.
Well, as you described it, I think of when I was in university in the States, and there are all these sort of freedom-loving organizations in America, the Heritage Foundation, Intercollegiate Studies Institute, Fund for American Studies, and I came from a conservative, pro-freedom. That's this is our shtick or our ideology, and I believe this stuff. I believe in our Constitution. Is it a wonderful document? And I came from that world, and I got away from a lot of that, but I was sort of trained by these institutes. They were well funded, and they would bring every year, for example, for several years, I would have a free trip to Prague in the Czech Republic with other young Americans, and we would learn from the people who had suffered under communism. We would learn from the people who led the Velvet Revolution, friends of Václav Havel, and it was an amazing opportunity to have these mentors who had, we only knew freedom in America, right? And to learn from people that had suffered under tyranny, under Moscow-driven tyranny. And all these, so it was thanks to those groups, and in many ways, that I'm prepared to be here in this time. I knew that this is something that we have to fight. I was trained for that. But it's so strange right now, those same institutions in America that sent me to Prague, for example, to meet the people who had fought communists are either against Ukraine or quiet about Ukraine. And they don't see that this is the same story, the same connection against the same type of tyrannical Moscow. And so this is a problem we have. We got to break through the barriers and show America. I think Europeans can see it because they're so close to the threat, on the same continent. But Americans who, they to this day, they still talk about how, communism is bad and evil, but the same type of communist tyranny is once again threatening the world, and Ukrainians are willing to fight for it. And at the very least, there should be some respect, I think, from Americans. But before even sending weapons, at least some respect. And from the right-wing Americans, I don't like these terms right and left, but it's a fact. It's like sort of Americans who talk about freedom, many of them do support Ukraine. And that's important. But like many of the Republicans in Congress are, they're absent, from this. And you've been meeting with lots of European politicians, and as we close here, like who are some of the people you really want to reach to invite them to Ukraine, to see the reality.
You mean from United States?
Yeah, anywhere. Yeah, but it's from the United States.
You know, I saw so many times when some famous person visited Ukraine and how it was, you know, it was so useful because when some celebrity comes and show to the world, to their followers, that this is a war, this is a real people, this is a real stories. One country attacked another one. It is 21st century, and of course it works. So, for example, when Angelina Jolie came to Ukraine, it was fantastic. I remember all media showed, and again, Ukrainian people were so happy. Of course, you know, I'm like a generation who was grown in late 90s. I remember, of course, you know, heroes from Hollywood movies, especially with the martial arts. And actually, I remember your great story about Chuck Norris. And I think we can invite him to Ukraine with you together. And I think it will be very good. We can provide everything, all roadmap, different meetings with volunteers, with soldiers. And if he or other interesting, like Jean-Claude Van Damme,
he was here, I think.
He was, but it was such a short trip, only the border.
Well, so as you say this, I think, and at first you mentioned the idea, and I was laughing it off.
Yeah.
But when I think about it, in the past weeks I've been speaking with some high-level influential Americans who I know about why they don't support Ukraine. And they care about me and they check in, but they're not in favor of Ukraine. And so I said, well, why? What, and a lot of them, they say, oh, we hear about corruption. They don't hear about the freedom story. They don't hear about the corruption fighting. They just hear the negative side, which is what Russians want. And then they say they don't have a trust of the American government. 20 years of war in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so we say, well, this is different. This is already a democracy, a free society, especially since 2014. And then the other thing that I hear, and this shows you how sort of burned out Americans are, they say when they see celebrities, especially like Angelina Jolie, that makes them say, no, thank you. They don't trust any of that elite Hollywood, Washington, New York establishment. Your average American does not trust that. And so they think these celebrities are opportunists at best. At worst, they have crazy theories and things. But the point is that it doesn't help. And if, for example, take someone like Sean Penn. Actually, I had his bulletproof vest. He was here in Ukraine the day of the full-scale invasion and had to leave quickly. And so I was custodian of his vest. I did not get to meet him. Sean Penn has developed a great relationship with President Zelensky. He even gave him one of his Oscars. And, Sean Penn, for years before this, he was running around to all different causes. He was in Venezuela supporting the dictator, and he was. So Americans who love freedom don't trust this guy. And so then they see him working with Ukraine and they say, oh, so if Sean Penn's in favor of Ukraine, he's also the guy in favor of, Cuban dictatorship, Venezuelan dictatorship, probably against Israel. It doesn't make sense to them. And as I look at, in the case of Sean Penn, for example, I listen to his interviews. He sounds different than when he's talking about meeting with Hugo Chavez, years ago in Venezuela. I mean, he didn't give his Oscars to other people. He gave it to President Zelensky. And I look at the case of Sean Penn, I think he was looking for a cause, looking for meaning. Mm-hmm. As I see with so many volunteers who come here, including Afghanistan veterans, war veterans, looking for meaning, and he found it. He said, oh, this is actually a legitimate good cause. This is actual people with dignity standing for freedom. He had this transformation. But your average American, who's struggling to get by and the challenges of life in America, they see these celebrities and they say, no, that for me tells me this is not something I'm going to support. And that's why I think I will now say I agree with you, Mike. Very rare. I would say the idea of inviting someone like Chuck Norris, because if you invite the Jordan Petersons, the Elon Musk, Chuck Norrises, they are kind of currently, leaders of the side of people who are skeptical of Ukraine.
I can add that you are talking about different types of persons. So some of people neutral, so they don't comment, about the war. Some people against us, like Ukraine. Somebody supports Russia. Like I was shocked when Steven Seagal was supported Russia, and it's terrible. But what does Elon Musk now? I think we also have to invite him and trying to explain him. Maybe he's, like at his, some moral or some kind of jail, psychological jail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I also understand when some, Hollywood star, come to Ukraine, he or she inspires millions of Ukrainians here inside the country.
Yeah.
And I think it's also very important. I also understand what you are talking about, that Americans will have some doubts, or they're is it true or not? Do they support regionally, or they try to play their new role? But again, it's very important.
You need both of these.
We need every kind of people who will come to Ukraine and will say in public to the world. It's very important. And I also, due to the chance, I want to invite, I'm a fan also, Sylvester Stallone. He's a great, and, I was growing by his movie like Rocky. It's about character. It's about, surviving, fighting. And it's, I heard these words from so many sportsmen and then from soldiers. So if you have a face, if you understand that you fight for freedom, for some values, you will be, undisputed and unbeaten. And it's very important to attract as much attention, world attention as possible. Because one of the main questions which I ask all around the Europe and the world, how to keep informational topic about Ukraine as long as possible. Because now we can see a lot of societies, a lot of countries tired to hear about Ukraine. They generally tired to hear about the war. And we have to understand, we don't have to, complain, we don't have to, criticize them, because it's our pain. And, when in my native Nikopol, under missiles and under shelling, it's one thing. But even here in Kiev, it's absolutely different world. Yes, of course, there are also rockets above our heads, but thanks to our air defense system, thanks for all person and all people who try to do a lot of efforts for our common victory, all of them heroes. And that's why we need to ask people. We have to appreciate all kind of help and support, and to fight.
I like this idea. Let's invite Sylvester Stallone, Jordan Peterson, Elon Musk, Chuck Norris, Joe Rogan.
Yes.
And as you mentioned this idea, and for example, when I was visiting you in Nikopol, and I met a lot of your friends who are soldiers, you see they have families, they have strong faith, they believe in freedom, these very things that Americans love. And you see, Ukraine is the best self-help book. If you want to learn how to be excellent in the most difficult circumstances, look to Ukraine. Joe Rogan takes the ice bath every morning. Come here, you take a missile bath. But this is the capital of strong character, and I think everything that Jordan Peterson says in his philosophy, his 12 rules for life, Ukrainians live those rules better than anyone. Even down to his last rule is always pet a cat. How many videos do we have of soldiers taking care of animals under fire? And so this whole part of the story is being missed. And so you're right. We need to invite these people.
We need to invite.
And maybe we start, and I'll say briefly with Chuck, because Mr. Norris will invite you to Ukraine. But I was at his house for a weekend when I was working at Fox News, working for the chairman of Fox. And Mr. Norris, thank you for the hospitality. It is. I have shared this story. I know that you don't. There's no street named after Chuck Norris, because if you cross Chuck Norris, you don't survive. But I spent a weekend at his house, as I told you, Mike, and I don't know if it's some kind of training camp, but he doesn't feed his guests, and so I had to sneak into his kitchen in the morning to get some food. And there's much more to that story, but we can make amends for this, Mr. Norris.
I think sorry. I think you can finish this story just only after when Chuck Norris come into Ukraine.
Exactly.
Don't finish it.
We can get Chuck Norris on the podcast of Land of the Free, and we will tell this story of how I starved at Chuck Norris's house and I stole food from his kitchen. But really, in a serious way, this is the place of of human excellence and great character right now. And it's not just Ukrainians, but all the foreigners who've come here to help. And so, all right, Mike. So send your invitation to Sylvester Stallone, Chuck Norris, Jordan Peterson. From Michael Poperechnyuk.
From Mike Poperechnyuk, from Nikopol city and generally from Ukraine. And I encourage everyone who knows famous people or you want to come to Ukraine, please come visit. If you need any kind of help, support here inside the country, you can count on me or to Joe Lindsley. It's very important. And I'm sure everyone who goes out from Ukraine after visiting Ukraine becomes our ambassador, because you will see by your own eyes, you will feel all kind of emotions here, how it's possible to fight against evil. And now we are real wall between civilization and Russian evil and Russian bear.
Well, Mike, дуже дякую, my friend. I look forward to our next road trip. And this has been our Land of the Free podcast with the great team of Ukrainska Pravda, Ukrainian Truth, here in Kyiv. Michael Poperechnyuk, entrepreneur, former kickboxing champion of Europe, diplomat, strategic diplomat, and humanitarian worker for victory here in Ukraine. You can follow our project at ukrainianfreedomnews.com, and we'll have information as well in the description about Mike's projects, how you can help him out. Do побачення from Kyiv. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity. We fight, we stand, and all for the win. Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава!